President Biden has a big problem when it comes to the truth about getting out of Afghanistan. Top generals testifying today on Capitol Hill and directly contradicting a key claim made by the commander-in-chief. All three military leaders say they warned Biden to leave thousands of troops in the country to avoid a catastrophe, but he didn't listen. And then he claimed it didn't happen.
I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan.
My assessment was back in the fall of 20, and it remained consistent throughout, that we should keep a steady state of 2,500, and it could bounce up to 3,500, maybe something like that.
Their input was received by the president and considered by the president.
So no one told your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No one said that to me that I can recall.
And while President Biden's calling how he left Afghanistan a, quote, extraordinary success, General Milley says the rest of the world doesn't see it that way.
I think that our credibility with allies and partners around the world and with adversaries is being intensely reviewed by them to see which way this is going to go. And I think that damage is one word that could be used.
And what about accountability? If you think at least some heads should roll for this fiasco, think again.
Senator, as a senior military officer, resigning is a really serious thing, and it's a political act if I'm resigning in protest. He doesn't have to make those decisions just because we're generals. And it would be an incredible act of political defiance for a commissioned officer to just resign because my advice is not taken.
So the big thing we learned today, Dana, obviously, among other things, Biden was told by all the military leaders, just leave a few thousand guys in there to make sure it's calm. He ignored them and then told the American people a lie about what he was recommended.
I remember when he did that interview with George Stephanopoulos, and he said, nobody told me that, and he said, not that I recall.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, one, we know that's not going to be true because we've been seeing for months, even during the Trump administration, that the military was suggesting leaving a small force there. And that was increasingly so in the spring of this year, April of 2021, as this decision was being made. I think the president made it in April, right before the beginning of April 2021. And I thought, well, they better hope that that turns out to be true, but of course it didn't. And I thought that was the big headline that came out of today, is that now it's okay if a commander-in-chief wants to get briefed and then go in a different direction and make a different decision. He's the decider. But what he did is say, I made a decision, but it was based on not on something that they told me, and now they're contradicting him. And I wouldn't have wanted necessarily to be in their shoes today, right? Because they're having to defend a failure that they know was partly because Biden didn't take their advice. And they don't want to completely throw the commander-in-chief under the bus. But then this other piece, when Senator Inhofe had Milley say that basically we have no counterterrorism on the ground, also Milley said it was a logistical success but a strategic failure. I think it's hard to spin leaving Americans behind and interpreters and all of our helpers behind as a logistical success. I understand that they got a lot of people out, but again, who were the people that they got out? They weren't the people that we were supposed to help.
Right. And Milley, we also learned, is a huge leaker, Dan. And he is talking to everybody in the media, all of these authors. Here's Senator Marsha Blackburn asking what General Joint Chiefs of Staff Milley has been doing this whole time instead of planning the Afghan withdrawal. He's been talking to about a half dozen reporters. Listen.
General Milley, yes or no to this? Did you talk to Bob Woodward or Robert Costa for their book, Peril?
Woodward, yes. Costa, no.
Did you talk to Carol Leonick and Philip Rucker for their book, Alone Can I Fix It?
Yes.
Did you talk to Michael Bender for his book is Frankly, We Did Win This Election, The Inside Story of How Trump Lost? Yes.
Yes.
Or no? And were you accurately represented in these books?
I haven't read any of the books, so I don't know.
You buying that, Dan?
I mean, really? Come on, guy. He didn't read the book. So he spent all this time talking to me. Milley looks to me like the kind of guy who not only reads the books, but like frames them and puts them on the wall, like for everyone to read. But he said a couple things. There were a couple really stunning moments there. Hawley caught him pretty good when well, that was Austin, but in the hearing when they got them to acknowledge it, you guys left Americans behind. Like, just cut the crap. Like, there are Americans there right now. Like, just stop saying you didn't leave Americans behind. You did. admit it, apologize profusely for it, get them out and do your thing. But Milley did something in the hearing. A lot of people didn't catch it. I don't know how they missed it here. He said two entirely contradictory things. He's talking about the call to China, which he claims now has been misrepresented. We'll see. Where he spoke to the Chinese Communist Party and usurped the role of the commander-in-chief and basically said, I was there to diffuse the situation so we didn't misinterpret anything. That's not his job. Yeah. I mean, if the commander-in-chief's role is to be strategically misinterpreted, that's a strategy. I mean, you may not like it, but it's not Milley's job. But then later on, did you catch it? So he's in the decision-making chain there, and he's like, no big deal. Later on, when asked about the decision to withdraw from Bagram, he totally passes the buck. I'm not a decision maker, folks. I'm just a conduit. So what is it, General? Are you a conduit or are you a decision maker? I'm surprised nobody caught that. I talked about it on my radio show. Like, he had two contradictory things.
And another contradiction, he said that he doesn't talk to anybody about conversations he has with the president. That's how he got out of all answering questions today. Yet he told Bob Woodward every conversation he had with Donald Trump. So let's just go to this other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of finger pointing. Military's pointing at State Department points at the Afghan army, military points at the White House. No one's accountable, but they want a bipartisan commission in a few years. What do you think's going to happen there?
I think it'll be quite important. I think that the American public is happy actually to see the people who were advising the president on this decision, that everyone agrees with the intent but doesn't agree with the execution, to see what they actually said or not, because we all saw the Stephanopoulos interview, and so we thought that President Biden had been on the same page with the people who would know better and were actually reading the intelligence on the ground. So I actually don't see these particular ones as wasted hearings, whereas I usually do, and I see them as kind of grandstanding and everyone just trying to get in their cable news.
Well, the one thing that did come out of it, as you mentioned, that was productive, they're going to have a written recommendation that the brass delivered to the White House, and it was in writing, and they've asked for that. So once they get that in their hands, that's pretty explosive.
It certainly could be. We'll wait to see what it is. And I would remind everyone at the table, not that you've necessarily forgotten in the audience, that Bob Menendez, a Democrat and a strong ally of President Biden's, has been the one leading the charge on trying to get this information. To Dana's point about Milley saying logistical success, strategic failure, I think that what he was trying to convey was how dire the circumstances were when Biden said, we are leaving in like 2 weeks. And so what can you get done in that amount of time? I thought that, to Dan's point about the call with China, the reason that he wasn't actually usurping the commander-in-chief's power is because Mark Esper told him to do it and was behind the decisions that he was making.
Not the January call. Not the January call. Not the January. You're talking about two separate calls. Those are different calls. The China, those are two separate calls. There's an October, I think there was a November, October call, and then the January.
The one where he also went back to Pelosi?
Yeah, Miller, acting Secretary Miller, has already said we did not authorize the call. They're two separate calls. You may be right, but not the second one.
The Esper one, I know that he was following the chain of command, and that's even in the Woodward book too.
John Rich, your thoughts about today's hearing?
Well, there's an interesting hypocrisy going on right now. We all know the story of the young serviceman who went on Facebook and called out his superiors. He called out Milley. He called out all of them and said, what are you doing? Apologize. Tell us why you made this horrific mistake. And he's in the brig today.
Yeah. That's right.
He's in the brig. And so what you just saw in this hearing is you saw the most powerful generals in our country effectively calling out Biden, saying, no, we told him to do this, but he did that, and we don't know why. Is that not effectively calling out the President of the United States? They're not in the brig. They've still got their jobs, but the young man who called them out is now in handcuffs. So I don't understand the duplicitous nature of that, but I don't like it.
No one likes it, and maybe one of the reporters one day, if they get a chance, can ask Joe Biden, you saw the hearing, Mr. President, not a lot of agreement there. You lied to the American people. Any response to that? Maybe Peter Doocy, our very own. Peter Doocy.
There's another hearing tomorrow on the House side. I expect a little bit more fire.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Dana will be covering it, I'm sure.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.